Christopher Marlowe here. I first heard this sound in this song 715 Creeks by Bon Iver. It's called the Prismizer. There's sort of a history to it. Francis and the Lights, I believe, came up with it. Bon Iver's engineer, Chris Messina, came up with a hardware version of it called the Messina. Changed the wrapper. Francis, of course, Bon Iver. Lots of people have used this. Frank Ocean. So definitely give this song a listen if you haven't heard it. It's a great song. It's just this effect, the whole song. It's an auto-tune choir sort of thing, and I wanted to do this in Reaper with just some stock effects. And I was stuck for a little while because I thought, how am I going to do that? Because we have this cool thing here, but it doesn't quite get us where we want. And then I came up with this.
Burn it, burn it. I said burn it, try to flame. Grown in the strain. No, I don't blame you, but straight is the game. And narrow the range in the garden. Darling, it spirals upward, inflates. It's country of fear. Pretending you're not here, then leave them to stray. Burn out the flame
for me. So that is what I just put together with a bit of stock plugin processing and sort of a makeshift doubler. But what we're here for is the basic effect, which is you can play any key on a MIDI keyboard or write in anything on the piano roll, and that pitch will be accurately, reproduced by the vocal in parallel, with the auto-tuned vox appearing. We have to use two sends, and I'll tell you why that is. Is because I tried to use just a harmony plus, retune thing, and it doesn't quite work. But this will all make sense in a minute here. So let's get rid of all the processing, get rid of the saturation, EQ, compression, the EQ over here. Now it just has some volume adjustment, some volume on the master. First step, of course, you auto-tune your voice because that's part of the sound. If you're using something like a saxophone like Bon Iver does, it's pretty much auto-tuned to begin with. I'm doing that very quick attack time. I'm doing the efficient algorithm. Yeah, so this is the auto-tuned vocal. Send this to another track. This track just has retune on it. And if you notice, this fader is all the way down because this is essentially a utility track. So retune is in manual mode, manual correction. The reason I'm not using automatic correction is because there can potentially be some weird octave jumps, like it'll go from A3 to A4 or A2 if the actual original vocal pitch is too far away from this level here. If you use manual correction, that tends to get rid of that problem. And the reason that's a problem in the first place is because we're constraining this entire vocal here. You can see I've turned on track pitch, and that gives us these little red vocal lines. If you haven't used retune before in manual mode, it's great because you can do little tiny pitch corrections. Not here because this one's in overlap, but yeah, you can otherwise do like these little things. But we're just constraining it to a single pitch over the entire length of the vocal. I've stretched this out to like 12 minutes, but that's however long your song is and however long your harmonized vocal is going to be. You just want to cover that area. And I usually go a lot longer than the song because in case I like really wildly shift stuff around later, it'll still have this kind of utility note constrainer in place. It doesn't matter what note it is in itself, but it should be around the center if you're trying to avoid extraneous processing, because it's going to be pulling this down to this pitch. And so if you have it way down here or something, it's going to have to pull the note a lot farther to get it down there, and so there's going to be more of a processed distorted kind of a sound depending on what kind of algorithm you use. So I like to have it around the center line of this kind of pitch graph here. So in this case I used A3. Happens to be in the scale of the key that we're working with, I think, but that doesn't really matter because we're not going to be hearing this note, this pitch anyway. Just so you can get it, so you can hear what it sounds like.
all the way to the garden.
That's what it is, right?
Darling, spirals.
Just what it looks like. Now we're going to pull this all the way down because we don't want to hear it. But then we're going to send this to this next track. All this track has on it is an instance of Reavoice. This is Reaper's stock harmony engine. If you haven't used it before, you're not alone. I hadn't used it at all, but it's this retune instance where we constrain it to one note basically made this massively useful because it's going to play back any MIDI note we feed it, but instead of being an arbitrary number of steps away from the audio in kind of an arbitrary kind of interval offset thing, we are making it sort of an absolute pitched across the MIDI keyboard. So I have it up to 5 voices. You can do up to 8. If you have it down here, you're not going to get any harmonies. So you want it up somewhere. Let's say 5. That's fine. You can play around with the amplitude envelope if you like. I think if you do this, the sound will disappear, but let's try it, I guess. Now, very important here. The most important thing about the Reavoice is the center note has to be the same note as this retune note constrainer. So this is A3 over here, and we make this center note A3. What that does is it calibrates the chain so that the pitch is correct, right? So it doesn't matter in and of itself what this retune note is, but you have to have this Reavoice be the same, in this case A3, same octave, same note. That just calibrates the chain, so now we have the correct pitches everywhere. You can play it and it'll snap into the right places. And from there, it's just picking your algorithm, your pitch shift algorithm. I have it on stereo. I don't know if that's really adding anything. It adds a little bit of something, but not much. It depends on what algorithm, I think, because I think if it's on the rubber band library, there's a little more stereo. That's all we're doing. I'm going to include these 2 tracks as since this fader's all the way down, we want to send the signal anyway to the Reavoice, but we don't want to hear it here, so we had the thing down and we send it here pre-fader post effects. In other words, it's sending the signal off before it hits the fader. If you go wildly away from the vocal, it will start doing crazy things. So, for example, if I pitch this down an octave, it'll get very yeah, very rumbly. Also, I wouldn't recommend using the soloist because listen to this.
Darling,
Like,
spiral.
what the heck is that? Okay, so I use Efficient or Pro. Rubber band library might be even better. Listen to that. There's something very rich about the kind of the stereo widening effect that happens there, as well as the it's kind of a creamy sound. Efficient is good too, not quite as rich of a signal. The only thing that I will do after this now is just do a bit of mixing or a bit of tone shaping. So we have some EQ and compression here, just some stock plugins, very simple. EQ on the Reavoice to bring out some highs and take out a little bit of lower stuff. And then we're doing a bit of doubling, right?
To flame, alone in a flame. No, I don't blame you, but straight is the game, and now the way to the garden, darling, it spirals upward in play. It's country of
Gets a little crispier and a little more controlled because there was no processing on these vocals. These were, I believe, just bone dry. Possibly, I think. Oh yeah.
darling, it spirals upward.
So we're getting a bit of stereo with this rubber band library. But if we add a second track with redelay, no musical length tempo delay, but just a millisecond length. I had it up to there like 19.5 milliseconds. Just play with it. And the dry all the way down, wet all the way up. And I have this hard panned right. And then we're going, if we almost hard pan this left. I can't do it all the way because this weird thing happens where
Darling,
I can't hear this now. But if we do like this,
darling, spirals upward in play.
pretty usable sound there, I would say. And that's without anything other than a little bit of stock processing. that's about it, really. It's just using retune on the vocal and then bussing that out to a separate retune track that is muted via the fader, just constrained to a single note, arbitrary, but I tried to go through the middle on manual correction. I don't even have to use preventing octave shifts on this because it doesn't do it, in my experience. I have it preventing overlapping segments, but it doesn't matter because there's only one long segment here. And tracking pitch so you can see where the middle is kind of visually. That's that really. No automatic, don't need that. And sending that out pre-fader to Reavoice. And the Reavoice is mapped as the center note as the same as the retune. And you just add whatever MIDI notes you want that sound the best. I find keeping them a little bit under the vocal tends to work. Not too low, not too high, because I like sort of a more smooth kind of a sound. And then some doubler. But of course you can add whatever you want. Hope some of you may have found this useful. And if you did, maybe I'll make more stuff like this. We'll see. Bye-bye.